Coleman. And I am so excited. I see that the broadcast is now live. So hello again, right? My name is Nina Moore, you guys, and welcome to the Moore Experience. This is Moore Experience, our third edition, right? And this is the D Word Part 2. The D Word Part 2. And last week I had a very, very special guest, someone that is very, very, very dear to me. My younger brother was an amazing, amazing, amazing guest as he talked about depression as a 26-year-old and the struggle that he went through. And you know what I really, really love? Good evening, as all of you are logging in. Y'all know what to do. Go on and share this, right? As what I really, really love, as I watched my younger brother, is that he hustled. No matter what was going on, even through his depression, I found him working through the D word all the time. The people around me don't realize how much strength that they actually have. And as I think about even my next guest, and I think about her battle with the D word, Sonia and Nona, I think about how much strength this young lady actually has. So I need everybody to tag. I need you to share as we get this word out, as we're talking about the D word. And we talked about last week, as I talked about the symptoms of the D word. And let's talk about the symptoms of the D word before we bring my very, very, very special guest to the line. Hello, Antoinette Truesdale. Thank you so much for making it your business to be here with us again on the second episode of the D word, right? The D word part 2. Some of the symptoms of depression, and I'm asking again that you would tag and share, right? Some of the D word, some of the symptoms of the D word, you guys, include persistent sadness, right? Anxiousness, pessimism, feelings of pessimism, hopelessness, having an empty mood, right? Brittany Glover, thank you so much for joining us. Feelings of guilt, worthlessness, helplessness, loss of interest or pleasure in hobbies and activities that you may have once enjoyed, including intimacy, decreased energy, fatigue, being slowed down, difficulty concentrating, remembering, making decisions, insomnia and or oversleeping, appetite and or weight loss or overeating, weight gain, thoughts of death or suicide, even suicidal attempts, restlessness, irritability, persistent physical symptoms that do not respond to treatment, even pain, headaches, digestive orders. That is very important for us to know. So as I thought about people that I wanted to come and talk about the D word with me, I thought about people that I know that I see amazing strength, people that have risen from the ashes. And there's no way that we could talk about the D word without bringing this lady onto the line with us. And I need everybody that's watching to put those virtual hands in the air, drop some flames in the chat. I see you, Lindell English from New Jersey. And I want you to welcome our guest, our second guest to the Moore Experience, Ms. Dory on Purpose, Miss Dory Ray. Are you there? Come on to the
hello. When you're going through the symptoms, I'm like, check. Yes, I get it.
I knew that it would not feel like home, because we definitely don't want to use that word, right? But I knew that it would resonate with you. We've had extensive conversations. And I've asked a lot of questions about depression because I know that there are so many different, Kristen Lewis said she made it. Yes, there are so many different forms of depression. And as I've really been studying, Dory, I'm amazed by some of the information that I'm hearing. And sometimes, and I do believe that there are times that people can kind of BSing, right? Where they're just in that woe is me state. And some of it is because of some internal battles that we might be facing. But I do understand that there is more technical things going on. Some of it could be genetic, right? That's what I saw, that some of it could be genetic. I know that mental illness actually runs in my family and some of the lineage of my family, and people don't realize that depression is a form of mental illness. Well, mental illness is a taboo thing as well. We talked about that last week. People don't want to talk about mental illness and or depression, because the first thing that somebody thinks about with mental illness is the straight jackets, or sitting there, they think about those kinds of things and don't even understand that there are people. And I did the statistics. Hold on, let's talk about it. Disability in the United States, right? Depression is the number one cause of disability in the United States among people ages 15 through 44. That is a very high, alarming percentage and a very high, alarming number. To know that they're talking about depression, the disability, not just disability, but the disability for 15 through 44-year-olds. Facts about depression, when I thought about it, affects over 18 million adults. 1 in every 10 in any given year is the leading cause of children with disability, is the primary reason why someone dies of suicide. This is so major. About every 12 minutes. So, Miss Dory Ray.
Yes.
First, I want you to tell everybody who you are, where you're from, right?
Okay.
And then we're going to talk about the D word, the dreaded D word. Come on.
Okay, it's so funny. First of all, Mrs. Mora, I am super excited to be on your show. Everything is beautiful. I'm not surprised. You do everything with such a level of excellence, and I am so excited for where this podcast is going to go. I know it's going to be bigger than you can even imagine. I'm more excited to be here to talk about the D word, because there was a long time that I couldn't talk about it, or we were told that we shouldn't talk about it, especially in certain communities. So let me back up a little bit and give you a little background of when the D word first started to visit me. I am 58 years old in September. When I was a young entrepreneur, when I was just getting into mothering and all that, that's when I first had my first encounter. I thought, but as I started to kind of meditate and pray, I realized that thing started all the way back in the 4th grade. The depression for me snuck its way into my life, and I didn't recognize it until it had totally taken over my life. And when I look back, hindsight being 2020, I can now see different parts where it kind of reared its head a little bit, and I didn't recognize what it was. But when I really recognized what it was, I had just started going to church. Now, I have to use that word loosely. I had just accepted Christianity as my religion, and I was a newly born again Christian. And that was something that you were supposed to be able to pray off of you. So for many, many years, I was unwilling to deal with it properly because I didn't understand why God had allowed that to happen to a child of his, a child of God. But to let you know when it happened, I am the girl from the hood who was destined to do good. I came up in a beautiful home. I had no reason to be sad. I had a beautiful mother and a father who took care of everything. I did the traditional route, graduated from college. Everything was going, no pun intended, hunky dory. And I had a career that most people wanted. I was a pharmaceutical sales rep. I had 2 children out of wedlock, but that wasn't, everybody was doing it. So that wasn't a big deal. But somewhere between the time when Aaliyah, who's now 26, was 1 and Corey was 4, one day I just woke up and couldn't get my head up off the pillow. I couldn't understand why. Just like you said, I started to lose interest in my job. And there was nothing around me that said that I should be feeling like this. Everything from the outside looking in was beautiful. My salary was 6 figures back in the 80s and early 90s. Everything, my mom was here. Everything was beautiful, but I couldn't get my head off the pillow. I no longer wanted to cook for my children. I no longer wanted to take care of my family. But most importantly, I couldn't control my emotions. I was just crying all the time. And just like you said, I was very pessimistic. I just thought everything was happening to me and God didn't love me. And, then I blamed it on the church, and then the church didn't accept me, but nothing made it go away. No amount of pleasure made it go away. I wasn't interested in my male relationship. Everything just felt numb to me. And then one of the ladies who was at the church, because she was one of the people who I confided in, I told her, I just feel crazy. And I hated the crazy word because I thought I was going crazy because people couldn't understand why I was unhappy when I had what everybody wanted. And I thought I was going crazy. So I had mentioned it to a lady. Her name is Reverend Aura Love. I always give her credit for the role she played in my life. And she was the first Christian who told me that I was suffering with depression. because most Christians told me, girl, you go up to that altar and let them lay them hands on you and you're going to get up and everything's going to be okay. But she was the first Christian woman who said, I understand what you're going through, and I think that you're suffering with depression. So she would try little things like she would take my kids for a couple of days and make me go downstairs and rest. She still didn't take me all the way there. But she was the first person who made me acknowledge that I was depressed. This is before any medicine or anything. My kids still tell stories about how she used to lock me in her basement. These are things people don't know so that I can rest, because she thought my children were stressing me out. And that's the first time my kids tell a funny story about that lady who made us eat brown bread, because we were white Stroman bread kids. And she was the first person who's made us start eating healthier. But she also was the first person, and my mother was still living. So my mother's been going 19 years, who 302'd me. She was the first person I allowed to see me go so low that she finally said, I don't know what to do with you. I'm taking you to the psych ward at Abington. And they put me in this psychiatric ward because it was against my will. She had me 302. And that's when everything started to come like, yo, this is really something I have to get control of, because it was taking my life away. Now I didn't know where my children were. I was sitting in a psychiatric hospital. I couldn't go home. My mother was still living, and she was so angry. This was about a year before my mother passed, about 20 years ago. And my mother told my father, go get my baby out that hospital. And she was so angry at Reverend Love. And she didn't like Reverend Love till the day she died because she did that. But I know that it was a blessing from God, because she made me look at it for what it was. The funny thing is, Mrs. Moore, when they put me in that hospital that night and my father and my brother came to get me, they told them I couldn't go home. That because I had been 302, I had to spend at least 24 hours in that facility before I can go home. That was the first time I was 302. And that I couldn't leave before I saw a psychiatrist. And that was the first psychiatrist that diagnosed me as clinically depressed and actually recommended some medications. And I can go on and on, but I'm going to let you come back in so you can kind of direct it.
Yeah, because I have a question, because I know that I hear your story. I've heard your story. But when you say, I could not pick my head up off the pillow, what does that mean?
I literally felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. Like I didn't have a choice. I had to get up. So that is kind of like figuratively, like I had to get up because I was a single mom with 2 children. And I was working as a pharmaceutical sales rep. And I was doing very well in my job. I was #1 in the field the year before. So there was no reason for me to be feeling like that. So when I went through that stage, I was living on Mohican Street. You know the neighborhood. Yep. My kids were going to Pennypacker Elementary School.
Okay.
My house was literally, you come down my steps and go up the steps into the school, like literally across the street.
Right.
So I had a job where I didn't have to go into an office every day. I worked from home as a pharmaceutical rep. So I would get up in the morning. I would take my children to school. I would get back in the bed at 8:30. I would put the alarm clock. I would stay in the bed till 2:15. I would get up enough time to wash my face, and because I wore the mask for so long, and get my kids from school. My kids ate so many pork chops to this day because that was the easiest thing for me to cook. I would cook something real quick, and then I was back in the bed. This went on for at least a year. Like I would get up, and it got to the point where it got so hard that I stopped going to work. I don't have enough strength to do, and I was falsifying my records at work because this was before computers and all that. So I was signing. I don't know if I should say this, but they can't get me now. I was, we used to give out samples as pharmaceutical reps. So I knew how to figure out the slips and fill out the slips that I had to turn at the end of the week. So I was able to do that for a very long time until it all became computerized. That's when my career went down the south. But I literally would get up every day, take my children to school, get back in the bed. I would sleep all day because that's the only thing that gave me peace was sleep, was getting out and just sleeping. And I had my alarm set when my kids came home. I would do my little minor mothering and get them ready for bed and back in the bed. And I did that for almost a year. Wow. So that's when I said I couldn't get my head up. There was no more interest in going to church, no more interest in anything. So much so that friends started to notice it, and they would literally come to the house and check on me. And I would look through the windows. I would let nobody in my house. It was miserable. But my friends started to figure, because I'm a social girl. You know me, I'm Dory on purpose. I wasn't Dory on purpose then. I was Dory, the party girl. And I just lost everything. All I wanted to do was stay in the bed. So I never opened my mail.
what did your house? I was going there.
Oh,
Tell us what if someone had a walk through your doors while you were hiding because you were functioning in your dysfunction. So if someone was to walk into your home during that time, what did the house of a woman who was suffering with clinical depression, what did that house look like?
oh my God. There's just disorder. Like to this day, I told you this before. I constantly straighten things up because disorder makes me nervous. I'm talking about mail piled up to the ceiling because I just, like you said, you want to avoid anything that could cause additional pain. Clothes piled up everywhere, living out of laundry baskets because you do the bare minimum. You do the bare minimum. And thank God the kids were wearing uniforms so I could just wash their uniforms. It wasn't a whole bunch of going out on the weekend. So I mean, it was a mess. Dishes in the sink, refrigerator filthy. Like you just do. I did the bare minimum. I mean, really, like the bare minimum. But I have to bring this in. During that time, I was introduced to medication as well. Okay, so when the medications start to help, I will come out of the depression and life will be good again. And don't ask me why I was non-compliant because I never wanted to be on medication. The side effects were awful. And I didn't want to accept the fact that the girl who was supposed to have everything going on, was clinically depressed. And I still was depending on God to lift that thing off me. There was not an altar call that I didn't show up to. When I tell you, if there was an altar call, I was there. And it was like the pastor went to everybody, skipped over me with everybody else. And I just thought I thought God forgot about me. And in the process, I became very angry at God. I'm telling you, for real, if I'm very honest, I'm like, why would you give me all these gifts and talents and then put me out in front of the world like I was a superstar success and then present me like this where I lost my house in the process. My mom died worrying about me. And the last thing she said to my sister was, please take care of your sister. Because I was depressed during the time when my mother died. But I knew my mom knew I would be okay. So I don't get real sad about that. But I lost my house. I lost cars. I lost my career. I lost everything. And more so, I'm still picking up the pieces. Now that I'm free from it, there's so much dust and rubble.
Wait. We're going there. We're going there.
Okay.
We're going there. We're going there. Hold on. So one of the questions that I have is how do you know the difference between real depression? And I mean, I know there's so many forms of depression. There's major depression, there's dysthymia, right? Bipolar disease, manic depressive illness, depressive disorders, postpartum depression, PTSD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD, which I didn't even know about till I started really looking up some stuff. And I'm like, that's actually, so men think, oh, she just tripping, oh, it's about to be that time. But it is a real thing that occurs in women. It's hormonal, and it occurs in women about 1 week prior to menstruation, and they disappear right after the menstruation, the cycle starts, right? And then seasonal affective disorder. Seasonal affective disorder meaning normally somebody's deprived of sunlight. So typically like fall, winter, when things get dark and cold and you're not moving around, then, and then it's seasonal affective disorder, what they call SAD. They actually call it SAD, SAD, where people get sad in the wintertime and the fall time when it gets cold and people are not as active as before. How do you know the difference? If you were talking to somebody today, right? And because you don't know, looking at somebody, you don't know that person is suffering with depression. What would give you clear telltale symptoms that it's somebody that actually could possibly be going through depression versus some people that just kind of really want you to feel sorry for them? And there is a difference. So where are we at with that?
Okay, from a medical standpoint, the way doctors and psychiatrists determine is by the length of the depression. So like seasonal affective disorder, they know how to classify that because most people suffer from that in the winter time. But like situational depression, they can tell because it's not lengthy. But when you're going for 4 to 6 weeks and that's when they diagnose you with major depressive disorder. That's what I had. Now, I believe, and this is what I believe, that the pharmaceutical industry has created a lot of rah-rah around depression because it is very profitable. Okay. Now, I'm not saying it's not real, but I'm saying that now they want to bring out all these different disorders because of all the medications that they've created to so-called take care of these disorders. But they are real, but there's some natural things that you can do to take care of. But the pharmaceutical industry, with the induction of SSRIs, have been making a boatload of money off of depression. They have built it up, and you got to understand, the same time these SSRIs were introduced, and those are like Prozac and Zoloft and Effexor, and what that stands for is selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So let me explain what's happening so you can the people can understand. When you're depressed, when you suffer from major depressive disorder, there is not enough of the serotonin that you need. That's your happy stuff that goes around in your brain. Okay, what happens with people is that's why you got to take care of your gut health. Most of your serotonin needs to get from your gut to your brain. And for those of us who were suffering with depression, there was a synapse that was allowing the serotonin to go out instead of holding it in. You feel me? So what the SSRI does, which is synthetic, it attaches itself to the synapse in your brain so that the serotonin that would normally leak out will go back in and you can feel happy. Okay? So Prozac, Zoloft, Effexor, and you know them, they're all, what happens is when that came at the same time, direct to consumer campaigns were beginning to become popular. That was when people start self-diagnosing. They start running ads on television, and people would start self-diagnosing because they say, do you feel blue? Are you da-da-da-da? It was a direct correlation. So, but at the same time, major celebrities and stuff started to admit that they were too suffering with depression, so they had to address it. There's so many things going on. So for the pharmaceutical industries, it's very profitable. For TV people, it's very profitable, but there are people like us who are really suffering. So we had to find our way in between all of that. Okay.
Here's the thing, because I it's so funny because I don't even really have to ask you no questions because you're really kind of going in the direction of my questions that I have written down for you. It's so crazy, right? Either we know each other very well, or I mean, you're just the right person for today. Because with the self-diagnosis thing, like I'm a little bit, I crack up when people be like, yeah, because I'm depressed. Because honestly, Dory, when you're really depressed, you don't know that you're depressed. And it amazes me. You don't know until you're really made aware, until people start asking the right questions. Just like you said, the length of how long that depression is lasting. I didn't know that I was suffering with depression until I started dealing with my gut health, and I started losing weight and losing the weight. I started feeling better. And then I looked back and started going through reading the symptoms, and I was reading them because we had some family members that were dealing with mental illness at the time. And I happened to be at one of the hospitals. I picked up a pamphlet that talked about depression. And I looked at that pamphlet and said, oh my God, like that was me. That was me. I was reading every line like that was me. And I mean, it's almost bringing me to tears because I'm like, I didn't know. Nobody could help me because I didn't know. No one around me. I was fake. I was you. I was wearing the mask. Like, I'm okay. Well, I could be looking you in the face saying I'm okay. And in the inside, everything in me was like screaming, like, help me, help me, help me, help me. But I just thought, oh, that was a part of life because we didn't talk about the D word.
Well, let me tell you this. And it's so funny that you say that because depression is one of those disorders that even the psychiatrist would tell you, like if you have high blood pressure, they can literally measure your blood pressure and tell you it's 25/95. You got high or low. They can measure. There's a physical measurement. With depression, and talking to a psychiatrist is very difficult because the psychiatrist can only diagnose you based off what you tell them.
If it's the truth or not.
And we lie when we're depressed because we don't want people to think so. A good psychiatrist will tell you to bring a family member with you because you won't say what the family member will say. So you might say, have you been irritable? And you go, no. And they go, oh, yes, she has. Or they say, have she been sleeping a lot? Like you go, no. They go, oh yes, she has. So a good psychiatrist in a good conversation will have a conversation with you and a family member. Not saying those who don't are not good, but some of the best have told me, and some of the best that I've seen, like they don't take your word for it because everything is skewed. And plus, we don't want to admit that I'm sorry, but the words are related. That we don't want to think we're crazy because because depression wasn't a fancy. Now that rich people suffer from it. Now, oh, I'm depressed. It's almost like you put it in your pocketbook. But back then, it was, oh, she got mental illness, and that's something nobody wanted to admit. Now, let me give you something else, Nina, that is the reason why I know that God allowed this for me so that he can push me towards my calling. If you remember, there was a time when we had mental hospitals, like up on Roosevelt Boulevard, remember?
Yes.
The only thing was in there was people who met mental illness.
Yes.
When they closed down the mental hospitals, they took those people now who would they would normally send to mental hospitals, they were going to jail. So there was a direct correlation with the closing of mental hospitals and mass incarceration. So it is so many things that are now being targeted as connected to mental illness that they have to deal with it. And now that, like you mentioned, the suicide rates are so high among especially teenagers, they have to start to talk about it. I hope I'm not all over the place, but
this is good.
It is something that we must talk about. You know why? Because it's so many easy things that you can do to help yourself get out of it. You can't take it lightly, but you have to do things to come out of it. And there are things that you can do.
Before we go there, because we are going to go there, I want to ask two questions. Then let at the very end, because my brother even mentioned some things at the very end last week too, is some of the things that we can do without medication, right? What we can do. So, but one of the questions I want to ask before we go there, COVID left an aftermath. It left a snowball effect of stuff that's happening financially, right? In the job arena, all over the world right now. Storms leave an aftermath. In the world, houses all over the place, disruption everywhere. What is some of the aftermath?
I'll just talk about my own personal aftermath. One is your physical health suffers because you don't keep your doctor appointments. You don't keep your dental appointments. Nothing matters but getting home and getting into bed. Like all you want to do is for the sun to go down so you can get that sleep and pray that the sun doesn't come back up. So you got to get back on top of your game as far as your physical health. Like I didn't have my breast exam done during those years. I didn't go to the dentist during those years. Things, all that didn't matter. None of that mattered. I just wanted to get into bed. Raising children as a depressed mom I am still dealing with the aftermath because in the periods where I wasn't depressed, I would overcompensate and try to buy my children's happiness because they were so unhappy during the times when I was depressed. So I would overcompensate by making sure they had the latest iPhone, the latest Uggs, and even whether they deserved it or not. And it has given them a sense of entitlement. And I'm still dealing with the aftermath of that because I did a lot of guilty parenting because I felt like my kids missed so much because their mom was in the wilderness for so many years. And it's funny, now that I look back on pictures, I did a pretty good job being a depressed mom, but you don't see that. Another thing is your financial life is in ruins because you don't pay your bills. You can't go to work. Like you said, you're out on disability. I've been on disability with every job I've ever had. So you try to live on 75% on what you couldn't make, and then that runs out, and you're not ready to go to work, and it just becomes a hodgepodge of problems. I lost a house, I lost my second house, and I'm still kind of trying to get things back on track because it's only been about 4 years since my last episode. My last episode was when I was with Total Life Changes, and I saw Tetra here. I can remember when my whole team was wondering where the heck is Dory, but people who knew me, they were like, we know where she is and she's not going to come out. Because one thing that I would do, because I was so embarrassed, I didn't know how to tell the world that this was happening to me. So I would just hide from the world. I wouldn't answer my phone. I wouldn't answer my text messages. I wouldn't go to I just would go under and you couldn't find me. I was like a needle in a haystack. And my kids knew not to open my door. Don't let anybody in my house, because I didn't want to be seen, because I would feel like I was a mess. And really I was just crying. I couldn't figure nothing out. And the way I get up, one day I just get up. I look at my children, I look at my life. And one day I said, I just don't want this to be my legacy. I can't, and people call me resilient, but I was scared to leave that legacy for my children. I said, because the few times I considered suicide, all I kept thinking was, I don't want my kids to have to say their mom committed suicide. Like, that was enough for me. It wasn't enough for everybody, but that was so difficult for me to think that my children would have to live the rest of their lives knowing that their mom killed herself. So, and I tried one time, and I couldn't get that right, child. I messed up, but I messed up. But thank God I did mess up. But it was, it's been 4 years. I really don't think that I really believe I am delivered and free from it, because I understand it, because I'm talking about it, because I'm no longer hiding it. Many people said, look, one guy said, I thought you was in jail. One of my business partners said, because I never talked about it. I had people who covered me. I mean, literally would lie for me and cover for me. And, just so that people wouldn't find me in that state. And he said, I didn't know where you were. I thought you got locked up or something. I said, no, I was just in the house, And wow. I want to share one other thing. Keisha Troward, Lynette Farlow, and a couple other girls I was in another business with. When I lost my house in Delaware, I moved into this little apartment. I was so depressed. I never turned on the lights. I was in that apartment for maybe 9 months. I never turned on the lights. I never went in my bedroom. All I would do was throw clothes in there. So one of my good friends that came in and saw my house, it was a shambles. She sent them over. Keisha didn't come. She'll tell you why. But about 5 girls, Charna, Celeste, and Lynette, came to my house, sat me on the chair. I couldn't move. I was just like this. And they cleaned my whole house. My bathroom looked like a truck stop. I had clothes. They hung up all my clothes. They were all over the bed. They cleaned my kitchen. They cleaned my daughter's room. They cleaned my house. 2 weeks later, it was right back. I didn't have it in me. And I wound up losing that apartment. And that's when Keisha's on there. Keisha said, let me tell you what Keisha told them that day. She said, because I was so resistant to taking medicine. I just don't know why, but I was. Maybe God wanted me to have the full experience. Keisha said, I'm not going. And they asked her why. She said, because if Dory will take one little white pill a day, she'll be okay. And if she won't take that pill, I'm not going to enable her. I'm not going over there to clean her house. And they thought she was horrible for doing that, but she actually took the right position, because I just didn't want to take medicine, because I just didn't want to accept the fact. Yeah, that was real love. I didn't want to accept the fact that I would have to be on that for the rest of my life. And I don't take medication today, but I do take care of myself. And I do the things that I know I need to do. And now that we're talking about it, I'm like, I'm going to do it more. Like, there's some things that you can do to keep yourself healthy and happy. Now, disclaimer, if you need medicine, go get it. Like, for real, if you are that low, sometimes I would just need the medicine to get me, I'll be under, just to get me to baseline. And then you can start doing some things that can help you stay happy and healthy. And God gave us that stuff. And if we do it, I say, and I don't know if I'm right for saying it, depression is a lifestyle disease. Like, you can choose after your medication, getting you to baseline, some choices you can make, some things you shouldn't eat. Like, we shouldn't have a lot of sugar. We should be walking at least, or exercising at least 30 minutes every day, because that is what gets your happy stuff flowing. Making sure that our gut is clean. Those things are so important for people who suffer from depression. Just like a person who may have diabetes. I told you this the other day. People who have diabetes say, oh, it runs sugar, run in my family. And I said, no, it doesn't. A poor diet and lack of exercise runs in your family. So for those who say mental illness runs in my family, I hope that I can be the one in my family that says, hey, let's do a walkathon. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's try not eating this, not so much starch or whatever. And I don't always do it right, but I know enough so that if I ever feel like that again, I know how to pull myself up.
That's good. That's good. So you've said a lot this evening, and I know that this is helping a lot of people.
I hope so.
And I know that oftentimes, like Marguerite Faison just said, sometimes people think that failure is a medication is failure, but it's not. Actually, You're more of a failure when you refuse to do something that could make you better, right? But with all of that you've been 302 twice. I know the story. I know this. I remember the story of the ladies having to come, clean up the house for you. I know I've met your children. I know the aftermath that you're still today. See, people think because you swept something up, but no, you're still today dealing with the aftermath. You made a decision because you just said it. I was going to ask, how are you today able to live your life now without any medication? But I think I want to ask you something even a little bit more intimate, and that is, how did you become Dory on purpose?
Well, when I at some point in depression, I think I started feeling sorry for myself. And I used to tell a good friend at the time, nobody understands. That was my mantra. Nobody understands. Nobody understands. Nobody understands. And at the same time, I knew that it was very prevalent. So I knew people understood. But when you're depressed, you feel like you are the only one in that space. So one day in my prayers, I asked God, I kept asking God, why me? Why me? That was my only prayer. And then one day something told me to say, okay, God, what do you want? What do you want to do with this? Like it was almost in anger. And I felt like I heard him say, I chose you for this because I knew you could handle it. That's how I wrote my book called A Girl Named Chosen. Because when I decided that the same God who covered me and everything else could help me live life beyond depression, it became easier. And it wasn't about the church. It certainly wasn't about the church because, I take a stand there. But it was about knowing that God loved me enough. I don't know why it happened, but one day I just stopped saying why. I would cry like buckets of tears. Why God that was the only thing I knew how to say. And one day I said, okay, God, what do you want? And it was something that came over me that said, I chose you. It was almost like a Job experience. It was like, I knew you could handle this from before the foundation of the world. This is for purpose. This is not for pain. You are Dory on purpose. Like it's okay to be Dory because I hated being Dory at that point. I wish I could be everybody else. I would look at other people and envy their lives and all that. And he said, no, I did this to you. I allowed this so that you could be Dory on purpose. And I tell you, Nina, I started the blog. This one happened. My daughter, I moved to California because when I lost the last house in Delaware, I said, maybe this is weather related. So I had a good friend in California. She said, come out here. And me and my daughter, my Aaliyah at the time was in 11th grade. Corey was in college. She stayed behind. So me and Leah moved to California. And while I was out there, Corey called me and said, Mom, I'm going to start a fashion blog. I had never heard of a blog before in my life. I didn't even know what it was. And something in me snapped. And I heard God say, write about it. Write this pain away, right? And I just started writing. It was March of 2012. I started writing, and the more I wrote, the better I felt. The more I wrote, the better I felt. But even more importantly, people were calling me and saying, oh my God, I need to talk to you. I'm going through the same thing. And it was God's way of showing me that it was for purpose. By the time I stopped writing that blog, it was 16,000 viewers from all over the world. I'm talking about countries I hadn't even heard of. People tapping in saying, oh my God, I'm suffering with the same thing. Oh my God, I'm going through the same thing. And it made me understand that God was calling me to a higher place. Now, has it always been easy? No, because I still struggle with the call because it's heavy. And I don't like talking about depression because I just don't like going back there. But I'm a girl named Chosen. I didn't choose this. God chose me. And every time I'm open and honest about things that God tells me to do, people are set free. And I don't even like it all the time. I call you, I don't want to do this. But I can't tell God that he made a mistake by choosing me because he always has a ram in the bush. And I'd be daggone if I see somebody else doing what God believed was for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how I felt.
Wow. Wow. Well, there are certainly a lot of people that are watching you right now, Dory, and they are saying thank you. They're resonating with what you've been through. They're excited that you're telling your story. And you said something, you said that God did it to me. He did it for you, right? He allowed you. You know what I always tell people, and not that we're gonna, but the one thing I'm not gonna hide that I love God, right? But I also don't want people to think that they got to come on my show and that only Christians or, only believers, because it's not. But I'm not ever going to hide or deny who I am. But what I know about God's word is that it says that he would never put more on us than we could bear, right? And because he would never put more on us than we could bear, you're like the tree that would bend, but you didn't break.
That was one of my favorite songs, Bend Don't Break.
Bend don't break. And although you thought you were broken, you weren't broken. You were just bent. And I think you went just far enough to understand the pain that forms the purpose so that you now can minister to other people. And I just believe that everything that we do, even what we do right now in our business facet, is an extension of your ministry. Because when you speak about depression now, one, you 100% understand how a person feels, right? And you found a way. You found a way. Thank God. Although at times you needed some medication to help lift you up just a little bit, you now know. First of all, none of your new tribe is even gonna let you. You can't go in hiding because we'll jump on a plane and come get you. So it ain't going down.
I had to move to New Mexico or something.
It ain't going down for to get there, right? That's number one. Number two, you were chosen to now help pull and lead other people. It is different when you talk about what you've been through, and you're still in a broken place, but you speak of where you've been through victory. And because you are able to speak about those places in your life, and you're speaking about them in a place of victory, that is why you in this season can be used on purpose, in purpose, for your purpose. And so you were designed by this infinite God, right?
Uh-huh.
And here's the deal, you were so angry with him, yet you found your way back, right? When he was saying all along, I didn't want you to be mad at me. I was doing it for your good, where all things were working together for your good, for the good of them that love God and are the called according to his purpose. I mean, that's exactly. So then you named yourself Dory on purpose. That's why I really asked you that, because I know that for a long time you were very, very angry with God. And even when we look at some of the things that we've been through in life and the relationships that the enemy tries to keep us from forging, right? Because sometimes the relationships are meant to pull us towards our purpose, right? I think even our connection is really not really just, it's not really about business, although business is the thing that will benefit from it. But the real connection that we have, it was because I needed to lead you to the light, which was your purpose, and now you can authentically walk in and live that Dory on purpose, because all things work together for the good and the love God and are called according to his purpose.
Let me say this, Mrs. Mora. When I chose Dory on purpose, there were two things that stood out in my head. One, it was the first time I could authentically be who I was. So I was being me on purpose, but it had a dual meaning. I was walking in purpose. So you said both things, and it means so much. And another thing is, I always said, and I wrote in my book, the closer I get to God, the less I believe in coincidences. And sometimes you don't see it until you're looking back at it, especially like our relationship. So I know that God doesn't make mistakes, and he knows the end from the beginning. So we're just walking this thing out. Like, this moment was ordained from before the foundation of the world. But to get to this moment, you got to make it through the moments. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and I have to say this so you don't close the live out. If there's a person out there who is suffering from depression, like if you're really down and you're suffering from depression, please go see your doctor, because there are points at which you do need medication. I don't want anybody to walk away from this live thinking they're going to walk it off or sing it off or pray it off. I mean, those things may happen, but those medications do work, and they do help to get your brain functioning properly again, just so you can think straight. Because you want to just get those medications will bring you back to baseline. So don't avoid going to the doctor and getting medicine, because if you allow yourself to go down so low, the lower you allow yourself to go, the harder it is to get up. And those medications do help, but that's not the answer. That's not the full answer. You got to take care of your health. You got to exercise. You got to eat right, because that is where you're going to stay healthy, because you don't want to be on them for the rest of your life. You can, but you don't have to be.
That's good. No, and now I think the way that we should leave everybody, just a couple things we should say, two things. One, to all of our believers, I'm a believer, right? And I believe in the power of prayer. I believe in the power of fasting. I believe in all of those things. But I also believe that the Bible tells us that in all thy getting, get some understanding,
That's
right?
right.
He says that we should also be praying for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And 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 I want you to give yourself permission to go talk to your doctor, right? And I want you to know that you are not a person who's an unbeliever, or you're doubting, or you don't have faith, because you decide that you know that there is something more going on than just prayer. And I believe in prayer. Listen, but I'm also believe that you need some wisdom, and you need to know when you've prayed, but now your body and the way you're acting and the way you're feeling are telling you more, like I need to go seek out some additional assistance. Okay. Give yourself permission to do that. Don't allow your friends and your church friends and all of that. And I'm a PK's kid, to make you feel like you're a doubter. Oh, she going to the doctor for that? Oh, because she doesn't believe in God. No, don't you allow anybody to do that to you. Go and seek out the help you need. Now, for people who are going through SAD, right, which is seasonal depression, guess what? There are things that you can do that don't require medication. Like, even if you can't get outside, open the curtains, open the blinds, get in front of your TV, walk to the videos, right? Don't eat so much junk food. There are things you can do. Detox. See, people run away from us because they like, am I going to
It's so important.
clean your gut out? It is so important. And what else were you going to say, Ms. Ray, before we go ahead?
I wanted to make sure that, as Christians, we've been told that Christians don't go to therapy. Go find you a therapist as well. Like I'm about to start my talk therapy again. I'm very open about that. I am looking for a good therapist right now because the aftermath is starting to be heavy. And I know that there's some things that I still need to talk out with people who have, one of my friends used to say, like talking to somebody, a stranger on the bench. I don't want to talk to Mrs. Moore about it. I don't want to talk because you won't tell the full truth. There's nothing but the truth, so help you God. So go see a therapist somewhere where you can put it all on the table, because a lot of time we hold all that stuff in, and that in itself will drive you crazy because it will manifest as disease if you don't get that stress out of you and talk about it. Talk about it. Not just to your girlfriends, not to your pastor. Go find you a clinical licensed therapist to talk to. There's some, if you want to go to a Christian therapist, they're out there, but go find you a good therapist and somebody who you can relate to and talk to somebody, because it works. Medication and therapy actually go hand in hand.
That's right. There you go. It goes hand in hand. And know that you are not alone. This is
You are
why we're
not.
doing this. We want people to understand the statistics. That's why every week I will be talking about the symptoms. If you hear something that sounds like something you might be going through, went through, going right, guess what? Go and get healthy. Get healthy, you guys, right? And it's amazing. We're gonna leave with this thought. Michael Jackson wrote a song. It was very, very, very powerful, right? Very revelational. He says, "You are not alone. I am here with you," right? And we want you to know that you are not alone, right? You're looking at me. I just masked it. Didn't know I was depressed. Didn't want to admit it. It looked like this. It looked like this for me. This is what it looked like for me, right? And the moment that I just it clicked one day. Dory, it was just like, I can't do this no more.
Can't do it no more.
Love don't live here anymore, right? That's how I felt, like I can't do it anymore. And so I did not have to take medication, but had I probably admitted what I was going through, I might have needed some back in the day, right? But for me, it was like, okay, enough is enough. Like, I can't go on, I can't go on, I can't go on no longer that way. For Ms. Ray, she needed medication to lift her out of that place. Once she got lifted out of that place, she made a decision. She made a decision. But just know, you guys, that the struggle is real, and that she spends every day making the decision, every single day, that she's never going back, that she's
That's
not
right.
going back. She's
That's
taking
right.
it very seriously, you guys. So maybe you're having if you're having high highs and then low lows, and high highs and low lows, if you realize that I'm walking and I'm cleaning my gut and I'm eating better and I'm still feeling like I'm having a lot of low lows and I'm crying and I'm just sad all the time, and then maybe, just maybe, it is time for you to go have a little talk with your doctor and let them know this is how I've been feeling. Matter of fact, you might need to start journaling.
That's what I was gonna
Out.
mention.
Journal, right? Jot and journal. I love jotting and journal because sometimes you just got to write down why you're feeling, what's going on in your world. Because if you jot and journal, you'll be able to go back and say, that's where it started, right there. If you find, then all of a sudden one day, boom, right? Now, there are things that happen in our lives that could cause some sadness, some
Right.
depression, like death, loss of a job, loss of some friends, divorce, right? All of those things could cause depression. It doesn't mean that you're depressed, but it could cause some depression. There are things that can help you through that too, but get yourself around a group of people, you guys, for real. An idle mind is a devil's workshop. I would encourage any of you who might be feeling like, you want to be alone all the time. That is a sure sign that you could be leading that way to the D word. Okay.
The sooner the better. The sooner the better, because once it grabs you and starts to take you down, the further down you go, the harder it is to get back up. I promise you.
Well, thank you so much, Miss Dory on purpose. You did that, right? As we talk about the D word, you guys will be back next week with another guest as we talk about the D word. Because we want to show people that it's men, women, young, old men. Like we want to show you guys that guess what? Depression has no respect of persons, right? So thank you so much.
Can I give you a quick tip?
Absolutely.
If I were you, I would do an interview with the family members of the depressed and get that perspective, because their perspective is very different from ours, because their experience is different from ours. So that would be a great interview. I don't know if my girls are ready, but you may find some people who are.
Definitely. So you guys see what we're talking about. Make sure and thank you so much, Miss Dory. Paul's probably going to take you down now. All right. If you know someone who's suffering with depression, if you know somebody that maybe wants to talk this out, right? If you know some family members who might want to be interviewed so that we can see the other side, right? There's the other side to the D word, then inbox me, you guys. Or if you got my number, send me a text message so that we'll know. But here's the deal. We're doing this so that you can live again. You can laugh again. You can hope again. You can dream again, right? And we want you to most certainly bling again. We'll see you back next Tuesday, y'all. Bye now.